Welcome to the College Preview Show. I'm your host, John Sarianides. Are you tired of seeing me yet? I'm on all our shows, but I'm joined by my partner, Ryan Barry. Ryan, how are you this evening?
Doing pretty well as you can be for a midweek Wednesday, but it's nice out and it's fall and that's all I'm gonna think about. Not gonna think about anything else outside of that. Nothing else
You're
happened
not
this
going to think
weekend.
about anything you witnessed on Saturday afternoon. Is that what
Nope.
you're trying to tell me?
Yep, nothing happened then. We've just got a nice weekend coming up. Halloween's
Yep.
coming. That's all that's on the horizon.
That's it. Stay positive. And before we start the conversation here, I do want to mention that we are brought to you by Yolked. Looking for a safe and effective protein product to add to your workout? Well, that product is Yolked. At only 47 calories, it is a delicious way to add additional protein to your workout routine. Tastes like birthday cake. Visit yolk.com today for more information and how you can order this great product. All right, let's just jump right into it here. Obviously, a lot to talk about. We are going to get to UMass, and we promise for the fans of all the other programs, we're not going to allow UMass to hijack the show, but we both have a lot to say about that game against Buffalo. Of course, the Minutemen visiting Central Michigan this week. We'll preview that game here shortly as well. We're going to start off with Boston College and UConn. UConn coming to the Heights on Saturday, picking up a 38-23 win. Both Kevin Stone and I were there, double covering it. Stone covered the BC angle. I covered the UConn angle. And for me, the UConn angle is simple. This was a game that they needed to win. Even though Boston College coming into the game was 1-5, this was a prove-it game for this UConn program. I think they proved a lot with that win. Joe Fagnano, career day, throws 4 touchdown passes, rushes for a 5th, throws for 362 yards. The Huskies were impressive. And when you look at the way that they were able to pull away in the second half, you look at the remaining part of their schedule. Yeah, you got Duke, you got Air Force, but those are winnable games. They go to Rice this week. But this was, in a lot of ways, that's 2 wins in the last 3 matchups for UConn against Boston College. First time that they've won in Boston since like 1908. This was a big win for this program. I don't give 2 shits what BC's record is. At the end of the day, for UConn, they were still an underdog in people's eyes. Yes, it flipped last minute. They ended up being favorites. But it doesn't matter what BC's record is. Throw that out the window. UConn needed this one. They came up here, they got it, and they did it in impressive fashion.
Yeah, I agree. It doesn't matter the record at BC. This means something to UConn. It means something for Jim Moore to cement himself as the preeminent program in New England. It
Yes,
means something.
that's what was at stake on Saturday.
Right.
Preeminent FBS program. And right now, they are that.
Right. And I think if you're a UConn fan, I think this goes deeper too than just the football. You can't help but think about in previous years when BC joins the ACC and there's these rumors that UConn's going to join too, but BC didn't want them to come along. They wanted to be the only team in New England dominating this market. So UConn kind of got left at the curb with the cab driving away, right? They were in the remnants of the AAC, then the Big East, and then their independent football. So it's a win that doesn't just feel good on the gridiron. I just think it feels good, programmatically to look at, that department and just think that if you are UConn, you're better than them in basketball, you're better than them in football, you're better than them in baseball. You're the big swinging program in this region for everything. So I'm really happy for Joe Fagnano, the only quarterback in the country who hasn't thrown an interception. And it's really tremendous to see a program that goes out on a limb, hires more, invests in them, and this is what happens. This is the result of a program and a state that backs their program.
Yep. And it's interesting that you say that because I asked Mora about that after the game. 2 years ago when they played here, after the game, I remember sitting in that press conference, and Mora talked about how Boston College physically was a different team than the one they had beaten the previous season at the Rent. And he talked about the fact that they had invested essentially financially in getting bigger and stronger and better. And that proved to be the difference in that game. And I mentioned that to Mora on Saturday. I said, do you remember when you said that? And he was impressed that I remembered that he said that. But then he went on to thank all the people that helped the program be successful. But then he made an interesting comment at the end. He said he wanted to thank all the people that give their hard-earned money for UConn to be in a position to get players to be successful. I.e., we have a legitimate NIL initiative, and we can get players in the portal. And that's the knock on Boston College right now, man. I mean, I think it comes down to one thing, and I know a lot of people that are affiliated with that program don't want to hear this. You're not 1-6 by accident. Bill O'Brien's a good coach. He knows how to coach. For Bill O'Brien to be sitting there saying, I don't know how to fix this, that's not good. But I'm going to tell you right now, the reason he doesn't know if he could fix it is because he knows they're not good enough. At the end of the day, that's what it comes down to. This team is not good enough. And I think a big reason why UConn is able to land certain players that Boston College can't, yes, the money's a big part of it. But the other part of it is admissions. And let's face it, Boston College is a highly competitive academic school. It's not easy to get into. So I do think UConn has some inherent advantages, but at the same time, their commitment to NIL and building a war chest for Jim Moore and this staff to use to bring in players, I think proved to be the difference in this game.
Yeah, and let's be honest here. If you're a recruiting and you are UConn and you're now looking at it versus BC, you've won 2 of your last 3. That game that UConn lost was only by a touchdown a few years ago. It wasn't like they got blown out. And you're looking at it and you're like, yeah, it'd be great to go to BC and play ACC football, but I could go to UConn, probably get paid more, and I'm going to win because it's not like BC.
And you'll get developed.
Yeah,
because their coach has NFL pedigree as well.
Yeah, and it's not like if you're Jim Moore, you're sitting in front of a kid. I don't know if he's explicitly says this about BC guy, recruits, but hey, you're going to go to BC. You're not even competing for an ACC title. So if you're not even going there to compete for something, come here. You're going to play. We can pick our own schedule. We're still going to play power schools. We're still going to play those cupcake games for you to pad your stats. They can just offer them more, and they can offer a fan base that actually cares. All due respect to BC fans, as soon as it starts to nosedive, those seats go empty. The get-in price for the SMU game in a couple weeks on StubHub is $2 right now. It's a night and day difference from where that program is and where they're going comparatively.
Yeah. No, that's crazy. I mean, at the beginning of the season, when you were talking about that Notre Dame game next weekend,
yeah,
you were talking $1,000 a ticket to sit at the 50-yard line. Mm-hmm. And it's crazy now, that SMU game, which, by the way, is the red bandana game.
Right.
That SMU game, and it's probably going to be a primetime game. It could also end up being a 3:30 game. But my point is, that's a game that traditionally the networks, specifically ESPN, want to pick up,
right, because
of the importance of the game. And the fact that tickets are going for $2 against a good program like SMU in a game like that, I think it's very telling in terms of the current state of affairs of this Boston College football program. They're just not in a good place right now. And, for Bill O'Brien, with his resume, his pedigree, to come out and say, I don't know how to fix this, that's pretty telling in terms of where they are right now. They're not in a good place, and it shows in the performance of the team. And look, he made the quarterback change, went to Grayson James. I think Grayson gave them a spark, but I think at the end of the day, the injuries are really catching up to them, especially on defense. Fundamentally, I don't think they're playing great football. Their passing game isn't generating the amount of big plays they thought it was going to make. Ran the football pretty good. Jordan McDonald had 125 yards rushing. And early on, they manhandled UConn up front. But ultimately, it wasn't enough. And I think that if you're Bill O'Brien, unfortunately, you talk about not being able to fix it. It's kind of hard to fix when you look at their remaining schedule. You go to Louisville for a primetime game Saturday, Notre Dame at home. You got SMU, you got Georgia Tech, and then you go to Syracuse. Yes, you still have 3 home games in the last 5, but these 4 of those 5 teams are ranked. I mean, that's a tough schedule.
Yeah, and I just want to, sum it up here and also give my flowers as you have to the UConn team and just in general, and the fact that Skylar Bell is probably the best wide receiver in New England right now. He's had 3,
without a doubt. He had 10 catches for over 100 yards and a touchdown.
Yeah, that's his 4th game with 100 yards. He hasn't caught for any less than 6 catches against a non-FCS team. He's got 7 touchdowns. He's just playing out of his mind, and that's just the thing too. They're just damn good. They're fun to watch, and I know that BC has their issues defensively. This is probably one of their weakest defenses we've seen in years, which you don't always see because they even in their heyday of winning 3, 4, 5 games still put in solid defensive performances when the FSUs and Clemson's came to town, but they're incapable of doing that now. But I just, Cam Edwards didn't even have his best game, and he still, made an impact. And it's just, I'm always, the New Englander homer in me is always cool to see someone like Fagnano, who transfers from Maine, makes his own destiny, and starts over Nick Evers, who was brought in with all this NIL money. And that's no disrespect to Evers, who's a phenomenal quarterback. But it's really cool to see that story with Fagnano and what he's been able to do.
He's been unbelievable for them. Yeah. And I think in a lot of ways, he changed the trajectory of the program when he came. Of course, he played for Nick Charlton, former offensive coordinator at Maine. Nick, of course, is with the Cleveland Browns now. He'll be in town on Sunday. But Fagnano changed the trajectory of that program when he committed there. And because, first of all, he was a great system fit. Second of all, he gave them something they didn't have, which was an experienced pro-style signal caller that can fit that system. He wasn't just a spread guy that was going to run around. He can make plays from the pocket. And you saw it on Saturday, man. I mean, you're talking about a guy who's 6'4", 2.25. He can hang, hitch, and deliver. I think he's a quarterback who's going to be really intriguing to scouts in the draft process next year, because I think what you're going to see is a lot of teams that are going to look at him. They see him as an undrafted free agent, but now I think they're going to probably elevate him to a priority undrafted free agent potentially, depending on how his pre-draft process goes. But he's a guy that could potentially end up being a draft candidate late in day 3. So he's been a terrific story for them. And I think in a lot of ways, he makes that offense go. Gordy Samus has done, by the way, former offensive line coach there. He's done a tremendous job the last 2 years, last year and this year, as offensive coordinator. I mean, Mora talked about that this week, about how he doesn't look the part. He's got the beard. He's your classic O-line coach. He can coach, man. He's a really good coach. He has a really good feel for play calling, and you saw that on Saturday. All right, ready to talk about the alma mater, because I know you're dying to talk about them giving that game away on Saturday. And that really, I've been a Joe Harris-Simiak defender, but for the first time this season, I really put a loss on him, in my opinion. This squarely falls on him and the coaches.
Yeah, and I mean, in credit to him, he's the one who he eats it afterwards. He doesn't make excuses, but it still doesn't make it any less painful, the fact that it was, coaching at the end of it, right? It is really what it came down to. And because he's been talking all season about how this team doesn't know how to win. We got to teach them to learn how to win. And ultimately, he's the guy that's got to do that. And in these moments, this is when he's supposed to rise to that occasion and teach them how to win and coach them to win and put them in a situation to be able to do that. And he just simply didn't. I think that's one of the hardest things. And listen, we can focus on that final drive till the cows come home, right? Obviously the interception, and we think the game's over, and Buffalo still scores and wins. But I think it's the drives before that, right? It's not putting the game away and making and trying to at least go for it. Because the drive 2 before, where they missed the field goal, where they took a chance on like a 54-yard field goal, whatever the hell it was, right? They should have just punted the ball there, or at least take a shot on 4th down and making your kicker, who doesn't make them from that long, go out and do that, right? But it doesn't help when you had 2 drives before that resulting in punts, right? Like they barely moved the ball in the second half. And other than the touchdown they scored early on to go ahead, it's just like you still needed to score there. The game, once they had that 21 points, it's almost as if they were like, all right, we got it. We got our 21. Let's just hold them defensively because we're holding them so far. Like it's not just about that final drive, and he is rightfully so criticized for the end of that. It's about the whole second half, and that's what fans are not focusing enough on, which is almost annoying me, to the point where it's like, guys, they had double chances and they just couldn't do it, and that's on him too. Like, we can get pissed about the interception and the late score, but it's like, you didn't put him in a good chance to win because of everything you did leading up to that too.
Yeah, and if you're in that situation, you got to get points in a couple of those earlier drives.
Yeah,
and they didn't. They came away with no points. That allowed Buffalo to hang around. Yeah, they get the pick with 1:10 left, but then they get the ill-advised 15-yarder, which pins them inside the 10. They couldn't get out of there. They ended up throwing it on 3rd down. They ended up having to punt. They give them a short field. 3 plays later, they score. I mean, look, every loss falls on him, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been a very long year. Again, just like Boston College, we didn't expect UMass to be this bad. But I think that the frustrating thing with this game is, yes, on the one hand, it was mismanaged at the end by the coaches, but this speaks to where this program is right now in terms of the player mentality too, that you decide in that moment as a player, it's a good idea to do something stupid, to take a 15-yard penalty, which proved to ultimately be monumental. Now, again, you can make the counter argument, well, it only took them 3 plays to score, so how much did it matter?
Right.
I think it did matter. I think it did matter because even if you punt there after 3 downs, that extra 15 yards would have tilted the field even more.
Right. Yeah. And like we were talking before we went on air, right? It's just like having that timeout, which they never even, I don't even think used on that final drive. It's just knowing they had it and you have the ability to take shots. And that was the thing all day. They let up 400 yards passing, right? A huge credit to the defense who shut down the run game. And that was something they've struggled with these past few weeks. And they were very, very good against that. Quan Roberson can run the ball pretty well, and he didn't really do that. They threw the ball 55 times and, had 400 yards or so. But for anyone that was watching the game, it was chunk play after chunk play. I mean, he was hitting from like 10, 15 consistently, right? Like they hit on that 4th down later in the game. That was from like 4th and 12 or something like that. So it's just the secondary is banged up. I mean, that's a fact. I mean, you go through the laundry list of injuries, and there's no shortage of them, right? Rocco Griffin was suited up. I thought he was going to play and then didn't end up playing, right? It's just – and A.J. Harrison, like, it's tough to say, like, did A.J. Harrison have a good game? He had 2 huge touchdown passes, which were awesome, and they were fun. But it's like he threw the ball 14 times and completed 6 passes, and the wide receivers combined for 29 yards. Yeah. Because there's no one to throw to, and with Gibson and Harding being out. But it's like, where's Donnie Gray? Where's Jake McConaughey? And this is just the final point of that. Everyone gets so excited about transfers because they're coming from X school. Donnie Gray and McConaughey were coming from schools that seemingly had some hype around them, and they haven't done anything, other than last week against Kent State a little bit. But it's like, where the hell were those guys on Saturday? Is that coaching? Is just not getting them open? Are they just not schemed up well enough? Are they not good enough? It's just. That's why I always get tempered when people are like, look at all these transfers we're getting, because it doesn't mean they're going to be good. It does not mean that. And that's all we've seen this season is all these great transfers from these guys, and just so many aren't hitting. And that's what's one of the most frustrating parts.
Yeah, no, it is. It's very frustrating. And I think that's, again, it doesn't matter where they're coming from. Ultimately, when you look at this UMass situation, and we're not going to relitigate it again. We've been doing that the last couple of weeks, but even look, they're not exactly, no knock on these guys, and I'm not trying to be a jerk to them, but they're not coming from high-end programs either. And even if they are, they weren't impact guys. They're coming to you because they're hoping to get that opportunity to prove that they can be impact guys. And I think that's the hard part here. The injuries have been a much bigger part of this too than people have talked about or even willing to admit. It's easy to go after Harris Simiak and the coaches and the lack of talent, but they've had a lot of injuries as well. And it's to Harris Simiak's credit, he hasn't made excuses regarding the injuries.
Right. He mentions it occasionally, but yeah.
Yeah, but he hasn't been out there saying, well, we're banged up, and no coach does. I mean, you don't hear O'Brien doing it either. But
right.
I think at the end of the day, this one was a bitter pill to swallow for UMass fans because of the way it ended. And then on top of that, there was no trophy to present Buffalo. Apparently, UMass was responsible for producing the trophy and having it on hand. Trophy hasn't come in yet. I don't know. What did Buffalo get? A certificate of authenticity?
Right.
That adds to this whole debacle.
Yeah, they got a free win, and not enough free win, I shouldn't say. But it's just funny because Saturday, you guys were really great. You let, my good friend Mike Ramondi, who works for Boston 25, he got a credential and came out. He's covered all kinds of big games and events, and he's really wanted to experience a UMass game day, and he loved everything else but the game. And it's funny because when they got that interception, he's like, I think they got it. And I was like, it is not, nothing is guaranteed. I was like, listen, I think that they should, but I'm like, dude, this game's not over. With this program, it's not over. And I'm not saying I was right because I didn't want to be, but I was just like, just wait, because they can screw it up because they find ways, and they did. And I feel for the players, John.
Bad luck. You're bad luck.
I know. It's just
Bad luck, Barry.
Yeah, I mean, it might be a coincidence. I got there in 2012 in the fall when they got to the FBS, and I don't know. It could just be me.
That, like I said, that's your nickname, Bad Luck Barry.
Right.
All right, let's just do a quick cruise around Division I football from this past weekend before we move ahead and preview this weekend's games. Obviously, heading over to the CAA, some matchups this weekend that we were watching. Not a lot of local in terms of head-to-head matchups. URI picking up a 58-17 win over Albany, not a surprise. Big win for the Rams. They've now won 3 in a row. UNH picking up a 24-10 win over Campbell. Actually, I'm sorry, they've won 2 in a row, not 3 in a row. UNH 24-10 win over Campbell on the road. Nice win for Ricky Santos' squad. And that was it. Maine was on a bye week. For URI, they got a big one this week. In-state rival Bryant visits on Saturday. Should be a good one there. Bryant coming off a bye. Needs a win at 2-5. But URI will be looking to make it 3 in a row.
Yeah, I'm if you're URI, I mean that Brown loss is going to sting all season because that's your one FCS loss to this point of the year. But they needed a blowout win, and I know that Albany's not a very good program this year, but they haven't done that this year. I mean, a 3-touchdown win over LIU withstanding, they haven't been able to just kind of put the throttle down, and they were able to do that. And I'm really happy too for UNH, who again, Campbell's not a great program this year, but you go on the road, you pick up a win. And that was severely needed, right? Miles Thomason played well, and he's been struggling this year. So it's good to see that. And this is about what we were kind of expecting with this UNH team, to be around 500. They go out there and they can be a road dog, but then they can also blow some games too.
Yep. Going over to the independent ranks / Ivy League, Merrimack gave Harvard a scare. It was 31-7 for your final, but that game was a lot closer than that. Harvard was able to add a couple of late scores to pull away and win this thing 31-7. But Merrimack came in with a really good plan. They executed, especially on defense, and they gave Harvard a scare for a period of time.
Yeah, I think all we saw in this one was just like the deficiencies of Merrimack, not really having a strong running game outside of Aiden Pereira having to do it all. And this is a testament to that Harvard defense. If their offense is struggling, they're going to be able to pick them up, right? And of course, like you said, there can be a play in place to slow down Jaden Craig, and I think that Merrimack has been good at that. And I'm curious if any Ivy teams are going to be able to kind of pick that out. If you kind of take away his first read, and things can be kind of shaky back there.
Yeah, well, it's an impressive win nonetheless for Harvard, but they had to earn it. Like I said, Merrimack put a little scare in them the first 3 quarters, and of course, Sacred Heart went out to Montana to take on the Grizz. They ended up losing 43-21. But you know what? We are the show of moral victories, and Mark Knopfler's squad acquitted themselves well. They fell behind early, but they were able to make it competitive in the second half. Still lost by 3 scores, but it's not all bad. Good experience for the players. You go out there, you compete. Now they come back home. They have a chance to, finish strong here. Of course, you're going to have Merrimack in a couple of weeks for the Yankee Conference Championship. But overall, you know what? Not a bad performance for Mark Knopfler's squad.
Yeah, especially being down. You're down 29-7 at half. And, I mean, you look at Jack Snyder's stats, and you'd be like, what a game. 20, 26, 214 yards, 2 touchdowns. You're like, oh, that's kind of not a bad game if, you don't look at the rest of the score. So
both Merrimack and Sacred Heart have byes this week, so they are not playing. Going around the rest of the Ivy League, Yale bounces back big time with a 47-7 win over Stonehill. Got off to a fast start and didn't look back. Tony Reno's squad needed this one after losing back-to-back games.
Yeah, and you look at, and I don't even think, Pittsburgher was really the focus of that game, right? Because he was able to get his yards, but also rest a little bit. And I think Dante Reno needed that for his confidence, right? I think he played really well and against the team like Stonehill, who, fair credit to them, this is where Yale was able to be like, no, we are a preeminent program, and this is how we can show that.
Yeah. It was a nice win for them. Brown with a disappointing 40-21 loss to Princeton, coming off the heels of an impressive win, come from behind win at Bryant the week before. This was a really disappointing performance by James Perry's squad. They had a lot of momentum coming into this one at 3-1. I think a lot of people, including myself, I'm pretty sure we both picked them last week.
Yep.
I think a lot of us thought that Princeton was coming in at 2-2, and they haven't exactly been the blue blood program they've been through the years in the Ivy League. But a disappointing performance nonetheless by James Perry's squad, specifically the defense, which has been pretty good for them this year. They no-showed. The offense struggled. They look a little one-dimensional in the passing game. They look like they're too much of a running team, and they can't really throw the ball well enough to win. Bad loss, all things considered, considering how much of a successful start they've had so far.
Yeah, I mean, Matt Childs ran the ball pretty well, but it's and it's just you can't turn the ball over 3 times, right? And I think that was one of the biggest differences, right? It's a shame too because this is a game against a Princeton team that's not. They haven't been very strong the last 2 years, right? And this is a game.
They haven't. They're not the program that they traditionally are.
Yeah, so if you're Brown, it's like these are the moments where you've got like if you want to leapfrog and take and try and get into that second tier of the Ivy, you have to win these games, and especially being at home, it was really disappointing. And this is what I think you and I had talked about a few weeks ago about Brown, right? It's like, are they going to kind of be that flip flop team, right? Beat URI, but then lose to Princeton at home, right? And that just kind of feels like what they've been at times.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, just when you think that they've established enough momentum that they can get it going, they lay an egg like this. Dartmouth goes on the road down to the Bronx and beats Fordham 30-13. Nice win for Simon McCorkle's squad. They come back home on Friday night to host Columbia. Game should be on ESPN+. Look, the Big Green are hanging in there. Harvard looks like a wagon. They're currently in second place in the Ivy League. Well, technically speaking, they're tied for first place, but they're in it. And one thing we've seen with this Dartmouth program in recent years, they've been able to hang around, and then they're able to win a share of the league the last week of the regular season like they have done the last couple of years. Looks like they're kind of in that same place here unless Harvard wins out, including beating them.
Yeah, and another slow start for the Big Green too, which is where I think it could catch up to them, against the Harvard, towards the end of the season. This was a tie game going into halftime at 6 apiece against a really, really bad Fordham team. And then they turned it on a little bit, but they can't get off the slow starts against teams that are going to take advantage of them.
No, I agree with you, and it's been a problem for them this year. Yeah. Going over to the NEC, we mentioned Stonehill losing to Yale. So Central Connecticut State had to go into overtime to beat Robert Morris, who's not very good. 24-17 win for the Blue Devils. They have a bye this week before returning to action in Week 10 when they host Long Island. Holy Cross, congratulations to Dan Curran and his staff picking up their first win of the season. A nice win on the road against a Richmond team that coming in had an above 500 record. Coming off a bye, the Crusaders needed a win. And they were able to win this game the way they've traditionally won games, Ryan, which is run the football and lean on their defense.
Yeah, and a quarterback change there as well. And I don't know how much of a difference it made, with going to Braden Graham. But, it's good to see Jaden Clairvaux, especially for how dominant he'd been, last year. So, just good to see them get the win because there's too much talent on that Holy Cross team, and it's too well coached to, of a program to have gone winless, right? Because it was starting to kind of be a little dodgy looking at that. It's with all the close losses they've had. So real credit to them for that win.
Your point, Braden Graham finishes 13 of 25 for 91 yards rather. But Jaden Clairvaux, 12 for 77. Neonte Puny had 12 for 47 and a touchdown. They got a touchdown from 4 different backs in the win. Again, that's an old school Dan Curran kind of win. This is how he built that Merrimack program. And to your point, I mean, it's hard to believe, when you look at how bad Boston College has been, how bad Holy Cross has been, these have been programs that have been near the top in New England Division I football, especially in recent years, especially this Holy Cross program. We all know how good they were under Bob Chesney. They still won a piece of the league last year in Dan Curran's first year, but it really went sideways for him this year. So it was nice to see them pick up a win on the road at Richmond. You are watching the College Football Preview Show presented by Yolked. I'm your host, John Sarianides. As always, I'm joined by my partner, Ryan Barry, who, he just did a little stretch there for us. You know why? Because he is yoked. And so he does stretches for us as we get ready to preview this week's games. Before we do that, I do want to remind you that if you are looking to add a protein product to your workout routine, give Yolked a shot here. At only 47 calories per packet. Tastes like birthday cake. It's delicious and effective. Visit Yolked.com today for more information and how you can order this great product. All right, let's move on to this week. Week 8 is in the rearview mirror. I'm going to say the same thing I say every week, Barry. Hard to believe it's already week 9, but it is week 9. And truly the fall does fly by, man. I mean, you mentioned earlier, Halloween is next week, and after that, we're right into November, and we know that 3-week window before the first week of November and Thanksgiving, that's pretty much the end of the regular season in football. It's hard to believe. We're going to have a lot of teams sitting at home this year. As of right now, it looks like we may only have 3 teams that are in either bowl or playoff contention in Division I football in New England. So we are truly winding down here. Again, week 9. Next week we'll be into week 10. But let's take a look at some of the games, starting with Boston College at Louisville. Primetime game on Saturday night, 7:30 on the ACC network. Going into this one, Louisville is currently favored by 25.5. Holy shnikes. That number is ridiculous to me, Ryan. It's ridiculous because I think a lot of that number is predicated on Louisville beating Miami last Friday night. But still, are they really almost 4 touchdowns better than Boston College? I don't think so.
I don't think so. I would take Louisville with that. I'm sorry, BC. To cover that.
So you don't think they are, but you're still taking Louisville?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah,
I don't think they are, but I'm going to take them anyway.
Yeah, just completely putting my foot in my mouth. I will take BC to cover that. I mean, I think Louisville's going to win, but I don't think though. I'd be hard pressed to think that Louisville can cover that just because that was such a big win. I feel like sometimes you see these letdown spots where they get a little bit comfortable and they get a little bit cheeky and it's at home. And, so I don't know. I'm going to take BC to cover, but definitely Louisville to win.
Yeah, I'm going to take Louisville to win. I think the Eagles do cover. I think it's a smart play to put your money on them as a dog. I still see them losing by potentially 3 scores, but that number is that's rich. Now, I also think a lot of what drives that number is that Pitt game a couple of weeks ago. I think Vegas is looking at that game and saying, well, geez, I mean, the last time they went on the road, they got thumped. So I think that that's part of the thought process here. But you know what? Maybe we're coming across as homers, but I think Louisville wins, but I would put my money on Boston College if I were betting on this one. It's hard to believe, man, but if they lose this one, they're going to fall to 1-7. And now it begs the question, and Kevin and I talked about this the other night, is this a program that at best wins 2 games? And what does a 2-10 season mean for this program moving forward? I mean, that game at Syracuse, the last regular season game, it's going to be a battle, and there's no guarantee they win it, man. I mean, they got to go on the road and play that one. They're in a tough spot, man, a really tough spot. This could end up, dare I say, being a 1-11 season, which is improbable, and considering they haven't done that since the late 70s.
Yeah, and it's tough because that I don't know what O'Brien's buyout is, but just the optics of a modern day college football program, I feel like their first thought is to fire, but I don't know if BC has the money to do that. I don't know what it is.
Well, it's not only that, and I agree with you, but I think it would be the wrong move.
Right. Yeah.
I understand the optics of a 1-11, 2-10 season are not good. And I know that the counter argument is, well, anybody can do that. I understand that. But you have to think about, are you better off long-term with him or someone else? I still think you're better off with him.
Yeah, agreed. And I don't necessarily think they should. I can see them getting a little bit antsy and think, oh boy, 1-11, that looks bad, So that's, but we'll see, right? We'll see.
Well, the only silver lining here, and I said this the other night, and I'll reiterate it tonight, is that when you look at the rest of their schedule, definitively speaking, you can only really say that Notre Dame is a game that realistically they probably can't win. And you could probably say that about Saturday night as well, but you never know with Saturday night. I mean, they're coming off beating Miami. They're feeling it, but they could also get ahead of themselves thinking this team's coming in at 1-6. They're not very good. We can look ahead to what's in front of us. They overlook them. All of a sudden, Boston College goes down there, puts it all together offensively, plays well, gets a couple stops in the fourth quarter, and they win a game. My point is that in the other 4 games, they can compete. So they could end up winning, if everything fell into place, 3 or 4 games. But it's still not where they want to be. So
right.
We shall see. All right, next up, we're going to go over to the MAC. As I mentioned earlier, we have UMass hitting the road to take on Central Michigan. Central Michigan is currently favored by 15.5. The Chips at home Chips coming into this one are 4-3. Of course, the Minutemen are 0-7. Can UMass carry over any positives from last week and be competitive in this game?
That's the question I asked actually Harasimiak in the presser was, how do you as a coach take what really was because if they win that game, so many positives away, right? How do you take that and tell your kids like, hey, I know this was heartbreaking, but we still had a lot of positive takeaways. And he gave an answer that was, very coach speak. I got to do my job. I got to convince him. I got to get through to him, of course. And, I give him credit. It's a tough question to think about, but I don't know, because they showed me a lot by coming out and playing well last week against Buffalo after that Kent State loss. But can they do that after another, because Kent State was a gut punch and Buffalo was too but just in a different kind of way, right? That was with the left hand. The other one was with the right hand. So it's like, can they sustain another one? I don't know. I'm going to take Central Michigan with the points and to win. It's just so hard to believe, especially when Central Michigan is a really weird team offensively where they have a dual quarterback situation kind of going on, similar to Dartmouth did a few years ago when they had Nick Howard only in there to run the ball. And, I just don't know how well they're going to be able to defend against that.
Yeah. It's hard to even pick them to be competitive.
Yeah.
For me, I think that they came out and they played hard last week and they proved that they care, and they proved that they want to win, and they proved that they're still playing for Harasimiak.
Right.
But then again, you go back to 2 weeks ago when they lose 42-6 at Kent State, and you're like, well, that's Kent State. Central Michigan is better than Kent State. So if Kent State can do that to them, you have to figure that Central Michigan will. I think that they will win big. I think they'll cover this number. I think UMass will be more competitive at home than on the road the rest of the way, but I don't have any – there's nothing that's going to lead me to believe that they can go on the road and win this game after losing the way they did last week. Last week it's going to take a couple weeks to shake that one off. It's going to sting for a while there. I mean, it's just, unfortunately, it's that kind of a loss. And, again, those games, especially when you're building a program, those games are tough to overcome. All right, next up, UConn at Rice. Huskies favored to boil Rice by 10.5. Now, here's the thing, and I thought about this. Is this team the kind of team that could have a letdown after a big win over Boston College, regional bragging rights, the whole nine? I don't think so. I think it's a senior-laden team. I think Jim Mora has his finger on the pulse of this football team. I think that Delaware loss serves as a reminder of what happens when you don't come to play on the road. I think they will come to play on the road. I don't think they cover this number, though. I think they win by 7-10. So I'd be inclined to take Rice as a dog at home. But I'm going to go with the Huskies to go on the road and win. Remember, they barely beat Buffalo at Buffalo a couple weeks ago or 3 weeks ago. They haven't exactly been playing great on the road, but I still think they get it done.
Yeah, same. It is a bit of I don't want to say a trap game, but, Rice is also coming off 3 straight losses. They were blown out last week by UTSA. So you wonder, are they going to be able to get up for this game? They only lost by a touchdown to, last year. UConn just kind of barely got by. That was after the Wake Forest game. So I don't know. I just don't like that this is on the road. And I think if UConn were to lose, I would think it would be like that. But you look at their 2 losses this year, both in overtime. I don't think that Rice is going to be able to get them to overtime. They're just not a good enough team. So give me UConn, but I agree with you. I don't like that point spread.
Yeah, no, I think it's a tough one. That 10.5 is a tough number. I don't see a UConn letdown. I think they'll go on the road and play well and get the win, but I don't like them at 10.5. That half, there's a lot of pause there. I can see them winning by 7 to 10 points, but Vegas knows what they're doing. So, all right, next up, we're going to go over to the CAA, and of course, as I mentioned earlier, we have the all Rhode Island matchup down in the Ocean State. Bryant visiting URI. Bulldogs coming off a bye, currently at 2-5. They visit a URI team coming off a blowout win over Albany. Can the Rams win this one and make it 3 straight?
I think so. I think the Rams get it done. I think their offense is grooving after last week, and I think they're only going to continue it this weekend against Bryant. I do think it'll be close in the first half because of just that layoff and Bryant being a little bit more fresh and URI having played so many games. But I really like URI in this spot.
Yeah, I do too. Look, I think Bryant, obviously losing Brennan Meyer for the year hurts. Elijah Elliott, they can still run the football. They've got some size on the perimeter with Aldrich Doe and Zaheem Collick. They can make some plays in the passing game. I think Jared Kiefner is a dual threat quarterback. He gives them a chance. But I think this is more – it's going to be more about their defense. And their defense, I thought, was playing pretty well at the beginning of the year. They haven't been able to replicate that the last couple of weeks. Played well in the first half last week. No-showed against Maine a couple of weeks ago. Played better in the first half against Brown, but then imploded in the second half. I think that's a difference here. I think URI has too many playmakers. Those playmakers exploit this Bryant defense, and the Rams beat the Bulldogs and improved to 7-2. And look, they need to win out if they want to stay in the CAA conversation and the at-large playoff conversation. All right, next up we have William and Mary at 4-3, visiting Durham, New Hampshire, to take on the New Hampshire Wildcats, who come into this one at 4-4, coming off a big win over Campbell. Can the Wildcats get over 500 here and pick up a win?
This is a tough one because I think that William and Mary is similar to UNH. I think they're both, kind of 500 type teams in the CAA who are capable of putting together a really strong week, but also not. So I'm going to be a homer and take the Wildcats just because I think that, William and Mary throw the ball really well, and I just don't know if they're going to be able to do that against UNH, who's been pretty decent against that. So give me the Wildcats here. I don't think it's going to be a super high-scoring game, but I'll take them.
Yeah. I don't think it will either, but I agree with you. I'm going to go with UNH here as well. William and Mary can throw the ball, and they've played pretty well this year in spots. But I think UNH last week might have found their identity a little bit on offense. It's been lacking thus far this season, but I think that they might have found that running game that they've been looking for all year. And if they can hang their hat on that and get good quarterback play from Matt Vezza, they should be pretty good. All right, now Maine returns to action this week after having a bye. They host Elon in a game that, Maine's had 2 weeks to prepare for. In theory, when you look at this matchup on paper, at home, returning to Orono after a successful 2-game road trip, you could pick Maine here, but this Elon team is pretty good.
Yeah, and that's just the
pretty good, relatively speaking. I mean, they're coming in at 4-4, so I don't want to make them sound like world beaters either.
Right, but a 5-point loss to William and Mary, 8-point loss to Villanova. That's what's just so hard, right? Is that it's like, how do you compare it? Because I'm going to take Maine just because of that week off that they've had, and Elon's been really just playing 2 tough games, another road game going all the way up to Orono. So I'm going to take Maine here, but I do worry a little bit that momentum of being off almost hurt them after winning 3 straight. But Maine has to show us that they can win a conference game, like against a team who's solid. All due respect to Bryant, they need to show us something here.
Yeah, this is a big game for Jordan Stevens' squad. It's many ways it's a signature game for them. They need to win this one. If they can win this one, I think it'll be a real momentum boost for them and get them to 500. And now it's really, how do you handle these last few weeks of the regular season, and can you position yourself to get over 500 and continue to build the momentum that you established last year? Look, I got to see this team in person a couple of weeks ago against Bryan. I was very impressed with them. Didn't necessarily follow that performance up with another dominant performance in a 20-13 win over Merrimack. I'm going to go Elon here. I think, yes, the bye week helps. You've had 2 weeks to prepare for them, but you've also been sitting around. I think this Elon team is pretty good. I think it's going to be a tight game, a 21-17 kind of game, but I'm going to go with the Fighting Musks. Give me Elon here. Oh, wait, different Elon. My bad. Okay, I thought he might have been connected to the program. I didn't know. As I mentioned, both Merrimack and Sacred Heart are off this week. They will not be playing, so they're back in action next week, week 10. Sacred Heart will host New Haven, and Merrimack will look to brush their teeth at Colgate. So,
which, speaking of Colgate, I don't know who you're going to next, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's getting late, and the later it gets, the dumber the jokes.
Yeah.
There we go. All right. Next up, we're going to go over to the Ivy League. Friday night matchup up in Hanover. Columbia coming in at 1-4. Disappointing start to the season for John Poppy's squad. They visit Dartmouth to take on the Big Green, who are 4-1. And as we said earlier, they're in the thick of it in the Ivy League.
Yeah, I like Dartmouth, under the lights, and I don't know if it'd necessarily be a letdown game, but like you said, disappointing from Columbia after a pretty, awesome season by their standards last year. So
Yeah, I like the Big Green in this one as well. Look, you mentioned it earlier, 6-6 game at the half against Fordham last week, but you saw what that offense can do when they start clicking. It's one of the most diverse offenses in the Ivy League. You got Grayson Saulnier at quarterback, O'Barra at wide receiver, DJ Crowther at running back, Corbo at tight end. They've got playmakers that they can get the ball in their hands and make plays when they need them. I think those playmakers come to play on Friday night. I think they take care of business in what should be a 28-10 kind of game, maybe 28-14. Give me the Big Green. Harvard hits the road this week, and what I think is going to be a sneaky tough matchup for them. They visit Princeton. Tigers, as we mentioned earlier, coming off a big win over Brown. Crimson coming off a 31-7 win over Merrimack. Do they keep the good times rolling on the road in Jersey?
I do think so. I'm going to go with the Crimson here. I like what they've been able to do, and I think that for Princeton, obviously riding high, like you said, but I'm going to go with Harvard, and I do think will be a good game though.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm going to go with Harvard as well. I think Princeton will hang with him. Coach Saray says the Tigers playing some pretty good football right now, but this Harvard team I think is at another level. The only thing I'll say is last couple of weeks, a little bit of a slow start. The offense was playing at an all-time level for 3 weeks. Obviously, we know it's hard to keep that going. You're not going to score in the 40s and 50s every single week, but I'd like to see that passing game get going again. Jaden Craig, the numbers can be a little deceiving. Their running game is kind of a collective effort. Xavier Bascon, the Swampscott product, had a nice game last week, but I wanted to see that passing game get back into rhythm here because when it's on, not only is that one of the best offenses in FCS football, it's one of the best passing attacks in FCS football. And next up, we have Penn at Yale. Pretty good matchup. Penn's off to a decent start as well. As I mentioned earlier, Yale coming off a big win over Stonehill. This should be a pretty good game. Penn enters this game at 4-1. Bulldogs at 3-2. Penn is in the hunt for the Ivy League. They've been kind of a surprise. Can Yale win this one and make it 2 in a row?
I don't know. This is a tough one because I want to pick Yale, but I like the football that Penn are playing. I mean, obviously they had a close win against Stonehill.
Yeah, the thing with Penn is you can't write them off.
No, you simply can't, even if they've run out of gel. And yeah, I don't know. That's my attempt to continue that. But yeah, so I don't know. I don't know who to pick here. Because I just don't really trust this Yale program yet.
Put pen to paper and make a decision.
Okay, then I will sign on the dotted line Yale. I'm just going to default to being a homer, but I do think that I wouldn't be surprised if Penn picks it up.
I'm going to go Yale here. I think they are a different team at home. I think Dante's starting to get comfortable in that offense. You mentioned Pitzenberger earlier. He didn't necessarily have to carry the load last week. They were able to sit a lot of their starters in the second half of that game. I think for me, look, this is what Yale does, and this is typically the tipping point for the Bulldogs. This is when they turn things around. I think they pick up a big win here, get back into the Ivy League picture. It's going to be tough to do because you're going to need help in order to stay in the race. Big picture, of course, they still have Harvard to close the season, but I think Yale needs that win to keep them in Ivy League contention. I think that win is this Saturday. I think they take care of business against a good Penn team. I mean, again, you're not 4-1 by accident. We got to see them play up here a few weeks ago against Stonehill. Stonehill gave everything they can handle, but that game was 24-21 Penn, 47-7 this past week against Stonehill. So when we look at the common opponent, that should tell you a lot. I'm going with Yale here. And finally, Brown visits Cornell. Winnable game for James Perry's squad. Cornell coming into this one at 1-4. Bears will look to rebound after a tough loss to Princeton.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Brown here because this is just the type of team I think they're going to be this year. I think that they're going to be kind of, here, and back again. So give me Brown there.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Bears as well. I think they bounce back, improve to 4-2. Another team that can stay in the mix and be competitive. And again, a couple of years ago, they went 5-5. It's an opportunity to get a fourth win here. And now you can position yourself to potentially end up above 500, which I think would be huge for this program. All right, next up, we're going to go to the NEC. Only one local team in action in the NEC this week, and that's Stonehill at 2-5. The Skyhawks visit Mercyhurst. The Lakers come into this one at 3-5. Winnable game for Stonehill. They need a bounce back after last week's loss to Yale. Can they get it on the road?
This is a tough one. I want to say Stonehill because I think it is one of their most winnable games, but that blowout loss to Duquesne last week is a really bad look. So give me the Skyhawks here. Although being on the road, I think will be tougher.
Yeah, I agree. I'm going to go with the Skyhawks here as well. I think that their defense bounces back, plays much better. They've got to get healthy. The offense has got to get going, though. It's been very up and down this year. I think Dan Hebert's offense has had some good moments, but I also think there's been some rough spots as well. And I think they need to finish this season on a consistent path and build some momentum into next year with what they have back. I think games like this allow you to do that. I'd like to see the offense pick it up here. I think if the offense does, they get the win. And finally, Colgate visiting Holy Cross. Of course, Crusaders picking up their first win last week at Richmond. Can they make it 2 in a row against the Raiders, who come in at 2-5?
I think so. I think that this is the momentum that they needed. That it's kind of a soft landing against a Colgate team who's hasn't been outstanding this year. So give me Holy Cross.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with the Crusaders to make it 2 in a row. I mean, this Colgate team has been up and down. Again, they're 2-5, but I think that the quarterback change could end up starting to pay dividends. But I think what's going to pay dividends even more for this Holy Cross football team is the commitment to the running game. You saw it last week. They got to stay patient. They got to stay with it. They can stick with the running game, and the defense can play as well or better than they did last week. Then this team has a shot to make it 2 in a row, and they need it. They can get this one. They can build some momentum going into the final stretch of the regular season. All right, Ryan, final thoughts before we wrap this one up.
No, I think, it's really sad that we're already at the end of the month. I know we say it sounds like such a cliche, but it's really the best time of the year, and it just goes like this, and it's the best time of year for football, and for, I mean, in my opinion, I really love the weather too. So that's all I really got. It's this feeling of like nostalgia for, I want the season to not be over, but I love every week that comes. I know that's a really weird way to put it, but
yeah, no, I agree. And it does go by fast, and you do need to appreciate it. And you really realize how much it goes by when you get to this time of year, right? Because that means you've now been through 2 full months of the season, and now you're coming into the final full month of the season. And it's crazy. The one thing about football is we love it. It's the greatest game on earth, but our season is so short in comparison to these other sports. I mean, I love listening to these hockey guys who sit there and tell you the Stanley Cup's the hardest trophy to win in sports. Yeah, because your playoffs are 2 months long.
Right.
I mean, maybe if you didn't play, a game 7 every round in every series, it might be a little easier to win the damn thing. So
agreed. I always think that as well. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
I love hockey, but it's like, yeah, because
hockey people are. Look, I love hockey too, but hockey people are obnoxiously idiotic. They constantly remind you that, well, it's the toughest game, and they fight, and they chip teeth, and blah, blah, blah. And then, it's the hardest trophy to win, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I mean, your playoffs are a quarter of your season. I mean,
right, yeah.
It's going to be hard to win the damn thing when you're playing 2 months worth of playoffs.
Yeah.
All right. Anyway, enough of me shitting on hockey. That'll do it for this week's episode of the College Football Preview Show. For Ryan Barry, I'm John Sarianides. We will be back with you next week. As always, get out there and enjoy the games. Peace.